This is Unexpected with Hannah Love. In this podcast, you will gain a new perspective of how God loves you enough to call you to things that you couldn't have imagined for yourself. Hello, everybody. I have a special guest with me today. Sissy, I'm so excited that we're finally sitting down.
Me too.
A fellow Arkansan and Hog fan.
Absolutely, and it's been a great fall.
It has been a great year. Actually, Shay's leaving tomorrow to go to the LSU game, so
Is he really?
I am a little bit jealous.
I'm going to go to the Texas game.
You are? Okay.
So excited.
Well, woo pig. So happy to have you today.
I'm so honored to be here.
And I'm going to cheat this morning and read a little about you. I'm sure everyone listening already knows, but I just want them to know. This, everybody, is Sissy Goff. Sissy is the director of a child and adolescent counseling center at Daystar Counseling Ministries, which is incredible. I mean, it's so incredible, the work that you do. That's really why I wanted to have you on, to hear about your story. But you also have authored 13 books. I knew you were an author, but when I read this, I was like, Sissy, you've been busy. You've been so busy. Incredible. And you've been featured on NBC, Nightly News, Good Morning America, Focus on the Family, Fox News, and many more. And I just think that is incredible. The work that you do is invaluable.
Thank you.
And I know that you come on a lot of podcasts and a lot of shows and you talk about your work and you offer a lot of resources online for anyone out there, which as a mom, I so appreciate you and David. And actually, Shay and I were on the podcast for you.
You were.
And David.
We loved it.
David Thomas. And so just wonderful, wonderful resources and people. But today, Sissy, I want to talk about you.
Okay.
And
well,
I'll
you
talk
gotta
about.
know, as a therapist, I don't talk about myself
I
very
know,
much.
actually,
so you're putting me in the hot
I
seat.
am. I was like, I'm gonna have Sissy come in, but I want you to talk about your story and what brought you here. Because I love to tease out the unexpected, and sometimes, all the time, I think if you look back at a person's life, the unexpecteds are where God works the most. And so
Amen
I just thought, who better to have on than Sissy? And you do so much for so many, but I want everyone to know more about you and what makes you you and how you got to the place that you are doing what you're doing.
You're so kind. Well, you want me to just jump in?
Just jump in. Just start where you're ready.
Well, I would credit a huge part of how I got to the place where I'm doing what I was doing with a character from Days of Our Lives.
Okay.
How about that?
I love this already.
How about that?
I love this.
Did you ever watch Days of Our Lives? You're younger enough.
I've seen it.
Okay.
Any nail salon I've gone in, or
It's
any
there.
grandma's house it's on in the background.
Yes.
So,
So I grew up in the 70s, and really therapy, I did not know a person in counseling.
not a thing.
I didn't know a person that was doing counseling. I mean, it was just a very foreign world to me. And I loved people. I loved kids. And for whatever reason, in the late 70s, early 80s, our parents all let us watch soap operas.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And I would record it during the day and come home and watch Days of Our Lives. And there was a child psychologist on this show
No way.
named Marlena. And something sparked in me that I thought, I can't imagine anything I would love doing more than getting to help kids work through whatever hard is going on in their lives. Isn't that funny?
That is so funny.
I know. I need to somehow reach out to that actress to
You
say,
do.
hey, listen.
You changed the course of my life.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? And so, yeah, I mean, that was back in the day where you were doing I don't even remember what they were called, the little fortune telling things where you would write down 5 jobs you might want to have.
I've seen the little paper.
Yes. So child psychology was always on them. But then it very much became my dad, our family had a family business in the hotel industry.
Okay.
And so my dad wanted me to follow in his footsteps. And I kept thinking, I don't really know that that's what I'm cut out for as much, but spent a few summers at a front desk. And then along the way, I just fell in love with the psychology courses for the same idea that it feels like getting to help people would make me come to life in a different way. And then these are kind of the most significant milestones. I was in college starting to take some psychology courses and stumbled upon the work of Dr. Larry Crabb,
Okay.
who was really one of the first Christian psychologists out there.
Okay.
And I grew up in a home where we didn't talk about faith a ton.
Uh-huh.
My mom, her faith was really important to her, but she was
Right.
very private about it.
Right.
And so I didn't have a lot of language for it. I accepted Christ at a summer camp at 13. And so that had taken off for me. But I read this book called Inside Out that basically talked about how we were made with these really deep longings for more that will never be fully satisfied until we get to heaven. And we adopt strategies to get the longings met this side of heaven. And it revolutionized my thinking. And I think it was the first time I learned and drank more deeply of grace than any other time in my life. And so that kind of congealed it for me. And then I just kept stepping towards what I wanted to do. And then I also had a young life background, and I loved how relational it was. And I mean, again, so many funny, unexpected things. Applied to 3 graduate schools.
Okay.
The only one I got in of the 3 was Vanderbilt.
I was going to ask if you chose Vanderbilt.
It was the only graduate school I got in. The other 2 were not as difficult schools to get in.
Okay.
Which was fascinating. So it just felt like God opened the door, and then the
did.
next door, and then the next door. And then I interviewed at Daystar at 23 for my internship and had tears in my eyes the entire conversation, thinking, this is it. This is the relational, getting to care for kids, getting to incorporate faith. I mean, it just was an amazing amalgamation. Is that the word?
Yes.
Of
And at 23.
At 23, all these callings in my heart I never had put together. So 30, almost 2 years later, I'm still there.
Oh, wow. And you're the
Days of Our
director
Lives.
now.
One of the executive
And it
directors.
started with Days of Our Lives.
Isn't that funny?
That is just so good and so like God to just weave it in like that.
Yes.
Was your dad, was he sad? Was he disappointed when you didn't? Or did he already have an inkling?
I think he was a little sad. I think he would have loved for me to
Sure.
have done it. But my male cousins stepped in,
Okay.
and they have taken
So
over.
it's
the
still a
family
family business.
It is. Yes.
That's awesome.
We're not in it so much, but
Well, I did a series, I guess 2 Christmases ago, and I called it The Gifts of Influence. And it's based off the 7 mountains of influence, which, you hear talked about in the Christian sphere about how there are 7 mountains of influence. And I really just put it out thinking, I want to encourage anyone in any area that they're passionate about, because God gives us the passions that we're born with, right? I can
Yes.
see it in my children. Each one of them already have something that makes them light up. And I just think,
and I love that you're the kind of mom that's already aware and moving towards that.
yes,
It says so much about you, Nina.
But God puts that in us, from the start. He's already written the plans of our lives if we only are obedient to say yes. But the 7 mountains, I did this series because I wanted to speak to people in different areas, saying wherever you are, whatever passion, whatever gift God has given you, you can step into that area, in that place of influence. You don't have to be a pastor. You don't have to be a minister. You don't have to be a missionary in another country. You can walk in the place God has put you in, the desires of your heart, and do it for His glory, and bring heaven to earth. And I so see that in
Beautiful way to say
you
that.
and the work that you have done.
Thank you.
Because it's not just children, you're changing the lives of all these parents, and I'm a parent and I'm like in the thick of it. So Asher's right at the cusp. He's at that age. To be honest with you, I started reading last year, 2 years ago, I started reading one of the books about raising, I think there's 2, Raising Emotionally Strong Boys, and that was David, I believe.
Yes.
But then the one that you did together.
Are My Kids on Track? Maybe?
Yes, that's the one, Are My Kids on Track? And we've referred to it on several episodes. And I had to stop a couple of years ago because I was so sad. I was like, my boys are going to get to the stage where they basically leave me for life. And they won't. They
No, they will
won't.
not.
But, and at the time, this was 2 years ago, so Asher was still 5. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick this back up when they get a little older, because we are now reaching those milestones
Yes.
that you talk about. And so, and you've been on my short list for 2 years now. I was like, oh, I'd love to have Sissy. And when I found out you were from Arkansas, I was like, done.
We are just kindred.
Say no more.
Yes.
We're gonna go do it.
Yes.
What would you say to women or people in general who may not know what that spark is, or may not know what the direction is, or may feel that they are unable to step outside of the thing that is expected of them, like take on the family business? Do you have any encouragement there?
No, I think my encouragement would be, I believe as women, our intuition is our superpower. I just think it's one of the places God speaks the most directly to us. And I think it can be really easy to kind of quell that voice and not hear it out of all of the different things that we're doing. One of my favorite verses when I think about girls is Psalm 33:4, that says, may our sons in their youth be like plants full grown, our daughters like corner pillars cut for the structure of a palace.
Wow.
Isn't that beautiful?
That is beautiful. I don't think I've ever heard that.
Well, there aren't a lot of verses about daughters in the Bible. And it was one I found in one of my parenting seminars, for one of my parenting seminars. And what I love about that is not only are corner pillars gorgeous.
Right, but the cornerstone.
Yes, the
It's like
cornerstone.
Jesus was the cornerstone.
Exactly. And corner pillars on a palace are strong. They are holding up so much.
So much.
And I think as women, we are required to hold up so much.
And it feels like such a low position at times. At times. And then to have the weight of it all.
Yes,
what
absolutely.
a picture.
I know. And so I think I would say I want every woman who's listening to really pray that our guts are in line with the Holy Spirit, and that He speaks to us there. And just like you're talking about with your boys, the things that give us life, the times that you feel yourself coming to life and renewed. And it could be that you start a Bible study in your neighborhood, you start a book study, you maybe start a podcast. I mean, there's so many more opportunities than there've ever been.
Yes.
In really neat ways. But our influence certainly doesn't have to be widespread to be deep.
Yeah.
And so I think I would just pay attention to what you love and what you feel passionate about. And I mean, I think my biggest prayer I am so grateful to get to write books and speak to people and have a podcast and all that, but I'm still counseling every week. And my biggest prayer every week is that God would lead my intuition to know what to say, what the next person I sit with needs. And I think all of us are doing that every single day with friends in so many different capacities. And so I would encourage that to be our prayer.
I love that. I think about that often. I think of there's two spheres of people I think of counselors, and I think of the wives of pastors a lot, because I think in those positions people are looking to you and people are pouring out to you. And this is funny, I actually took an aptitude test after college. I ended up graduating just to graduate because I'd been in 4.5 years, and it was a long story, but I was in speech path and they changed the program midway through, and I finally just threw up my hands and said, I just want to graduate.
Yes.
So I did, and I took one of those aptitude tests that they tell you to take to place you with jobs that, match whatever your, I don't know how they work.
Somehow they know your giftings.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I failed it.
Oh.
Yes, I failed it. And I said, how does one fail an aptitude test? What I took away from it, and it's beautiful now because one of the first episodes I think that I did on here, it was so long ago, but I wrote about there's no box for you. And I felt like in a way, sometimes the tests that we take are trying to put us in a box.
That's so true.
And I thought to myself, gosh, I'm not going to be discouraged. And I'm going to look back at this. And I took it again, and counseling was way up there. It was like counseling, marriage counseling therapist. It was like the one thing that was kind of, and truly, I love people and I love to help people. And the psychology and sociology aspect is so interesting to me, so interesting to me. But my mom was a teacher, and I watched her for all these years, and her heart was in it. She loved teach. She was a kindergarten teacher.
Ah,
But I watched her be so in love with these children, but also so heartbroken for certain things that she would see.
yes.
And I remember thinking to myself, I don't think I would have the capacity to be so attached and to be so broken for all the people, because I think some people, I'm tender, I guess, but I just feel like I soak those things in.
Yes.
So I think of people who are in the position of hearing other people's stories, hearing trauma, hearing issues and heartbreak. But when it's up to that person to start sifting through someone else's hurt or pain or baggage, whatever you want to call it, I think so much of those people. And I think that there has to be a special gifting and anointing, really, that God puts on those people to be able to bear, like you said, like a cornerstone, to bear the weight of it and also to be able to release it to Him. I listen to a lot of John Eldredge, and if you listen to his books or his podcasts, he always starts with giving everything and everyone to God. It's like the start of his, it's like consecrating the day. And I think to myself, people in your position probably, or any position, even a nurse or a teacher, someone where
Yes.
you encounter a lot of heartbreak or just you see humanity
Yes.
in its brokenness in any position. I think that there's a gift there. But God does equip us. And there are things that we can do, like consecrating the day. And say, God, just take this day and these people and my heart and my emotions, and I'm just going to give it all to you. And if you start your day that way, I feel like you're handing it to God and you're doing it in a purposeful way that then somehow frees you up. So for the rest of the day, you're like, I already gave this to God.
Yes.
And it's His.
Such a great
And these are
reminder.
His children and these are His people. And so that one's free. That one is just free of charge. I'm not even the counselor here.
Well, but I love that aptitude test happened like it did, because I think,
did.
isn't that funny? What year was that probably?
That was at least 10 years ago, maybe 13 years ago.
So there weren't even podcasts, I don't think.
No.
13. So it would have
No.
never registered that.
Right.
That God would call you to that, but you end up being like a therapist.
Well, and this is not even what I would have chosen to do. And my listeners know this, but this is not my sphere right here. I married someone in the spotlight. I did not want to be someone in the spotlight.
Which is why you do such a beautiful job.
Well, thank
with so
you.
much humility and
Thank
kindness.
you. And I see that that's what God, he asks us to do things that are uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I went into it going, this is not for money. I don't make any money. I'm trying to be obedient where God is calling me. And the beautiful part about that is I have seen the desires of my heart answered. And God knows the desires of my heart. And I want to pull this back to what you said about the prayer of asking God to line up your heart with His will. And this is a specific prayer. It's a very specific prayer, because we can think that we have plans. I've talked about this with my sister-in-law on this podcast, but a few years ago, God gave me specific prayers for each of my siblings and sisters-in-law, and I told them. And for Erica, it was for her heart to be aligned with God's heart. And I prayed that for her the whole summer long. And I told her, and she started praying that, and she has shared that everything shifted.
Wow.
When she started asking for her heart to align with God's heart. And in that, there was a shift. And all of a sudden, her desires changed. And her desires were what God really wanted for her, which I think is something we can all be praying.
Yes.
And in this podcast, in this thing that I didn't choose to do for myself, God has gifted me with being able to help people and being able to pour out and to touch people's lives in a way that truly is so filling for me, just like the work that you do is so filling for
Yes.
you.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, God answered the desires of my heart that I didn't even know I had. So if you pray that prayer, watch out, because God will start moving things and shifting things, I think, in your own heart to
Yes.
align with what He really wants you to do, what He's calling you to do, what He made you for.
Yes.
So anything else that you want to share today? You know, I almost told you to bring Lucy.
Oh. Well, I have sad news.
No,
I lost Lucy in January.
no.
I know.
Oh,
Dogs are a part of our
Sissy.
therapy practice, which is such a gift. I had actually the first therapy dog at Daystar. It was the sweetest story. I was seeing a girl who was probably about 15. And that day, I had a different dog at the time, Noelle. And I think I had somebody at my house working and I couldn't leave my dog. And so I'd asked my boss, Melissa, my dear friend, if I could bring her to work. And I brought Noelle, and in the course of this conversation, this girl told me she was thinking about ending her life. And I needed to call her mom and have her mom come. You know, it's the worst conversation you
Right.
can ever have, obviously, as a therapist. And I was just heartbroken for both of them. And so I stepped out of the room and I left Noelle with this girl. And I came back in. Noelle had never been there before
Right.
doing this. And Noelle was in her lap, licking her little tears. And I told Melissa about it later, and she said, bring her every day. And we now have, I think, 7 dogs on staff at Daystar.
Oh,
So I lost sweet little Lucy,
I'm so
who,
sorry.
thank you. I got to write a book for little girls with anxiety, worrying anxiety, and Lucy starred all in it. And so she is infamized
I
forever.
love that.
And this is really a strange thing about my family, Hannah. When I was growing up, when we had a dog die, my mom would go out and buy the same kind of dog the same day and name it the same thing.
That's not strange.
You
We
don't
would buy
think?
the same. We would buy the same kind of dog. We
Yes.
didn't name it the same,
Yes.
but it was like the legacy was living on.
Well, there you go. That's a very gracious
Same
way to say
thing.
that. Well, I didn't go out the same day, but I lived by myself and I didn't want to be at my house without a dog. And so I think I waited a week.
Yeah,
So I have a puppy.
that's a respectable amount of time, by the way.
Thank you. I have a puppy named Patches, who is my second Havanese, and she is precious and a
How
mess.
sweet.
And already a therapy dog and helping me counsel kids and doing an amazing
I
job.
love that. We've got our 2 big pups, and then we've also got 2 cats. Shay actually rescued one off the road 2 years ago around Thanksgiving, and that's how we got our first cat. And I love cats, and I thought they would be more low maintenance than dogs, but Shay wanted dogs first, and so 2 dogs. He rescued the cat, and then I was like, the cat needs a friend.
Yes.
So now we have 2 cats, 2 dogs, 3 boys, and another baby on the way. I joke and tell people we could throw in a goat and start a farm.
Yeah.
I mean, we're really
You
closing
totally
in on it.
could. Yes.
But I have even seen with Asher the cats being so good for him, which the dogs are great too, but the cats are more in the house. And so when the cat chooses to go and sleep on his bed or wants to go to him to pet, he's like, look, she loves me. And Asher has a little bit of anxiety. And so having that it's just been so sweet to watch. So sweet to watch. And
They're
even the
powerful.
confidence that they have with
Yes.
feeling loved by someone that's not, an adult or someone that says that, it's mom and dad and they feel like mom and dad have to love them.
Yes.
So feeling chosen and loved by a sweet little fur baby
Yes.
is such therapy.
Makes such a difference.
It does.
For kids, for all of us.
For all of us, even as a child. And I grew up on a farm.
Did you
So
really?
my therapy was, I can say this looking back, but was always being outside and being around animals.
Yes.
And I know some people have ministries with horses. And see, we can go on about the things that can become ministries
Yes.
for people that are passions, that are something that God puts in you from a young age.
That's exactly right.
I love that.
Yes.
Well, I hate to hear that about Lucy,
Thank
but
you.
I'm
You're
so
so
glad that
kind.
we have Patches,
Me too.
and Patches has already started the work.
Doing hard work. Yep.
Mm-hmm. I bet Patches gets a lot of treats.
She gets a lot of treats and a lot of pets, and we spend a lot of time on the floor with a lot of kids.
I love it.
Really sweet.
Do you have anything else in your story that you want to share? Any little piece that was unexpected, or maybe a piece of encouragement that just bubbles up?
Well, I think probably the other biggest unexpected, I mean, I definitely have talked more about the positive,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the harder unexpected piece for me was I think growing up when I did in Little Rock, Arkansas,
Mm-hmm.
I did not know any women. I mean, I'm trying to think if this is true. I don't think I mean, and some of it was the sphere that I was living in, but I didn't know any women my age now who were single with no kids.
Mm-hmm.
And my plan for my life was to be a stay-at-home mom. And I never ever would have expected and have been through a lot of seasons of grief
Mm.
because I mean, speaking of the desires of your heart, those were
Right.
certainly some of mine. And I think we just never know what our life's going to look like.
Yeah.
And I personally, there are women who can do a lot of different things and do them beautifully. I
Mm-hmm.
personally could not do what I do and be a mom to several kids and a wife
Wow.
because I'm traveling so
Right.
much and I work a good bit. I think I have
Mm-hmm.
good work life balance these days. It took me a little bit to get there, but I think I just would say that to say, I think for all of us, our journey is going to be full of beautiful surprises and
Mm.
surprises that cause grief
Yeah.
that we wouldn't have imagined, and it all feels like it is covered in the redemption and call and beauty and glory of
Mm.
God's plan and creation.
Yeah.
And I think now I'm so grateful for my life, and
Mm.
I just have gotten to be in spaces I would have never ever not only imagined but never felt like I was capable to
Right.
do. I mean, I've stepped into some places that now, even when I look back, are terrifying.
Yeah.
And it felt like God put me in the place and called me to it, and I there wasn't any option at the time
Right.
but to step in. And I think if somebody would have said, Sissy, you're not going to marry, you're not going to have kids, but you're going to be doing all these things, I
Mm-hmm.
would have said, pick someone else. I can't
Yes.
do it.
Yes.
But he knew, and that's not to say, I mean, who knows what's in the
Right.
future? I have no
Right.
idea. But I think I wouldn't want to sit with you and talk about the unexpected and not be honest about the, I think
The
sorrow
good
and
and the
joy
hard.
are all always mixed in.
Yes.
And I think any of us who reach a certain age, I don't know what the age is. Actually, I heard Richard Rohr. Do you know who that
I
is?
don't.
He is a Catholic priest, and I went to a seminar he did once on the Enneagram, which is
Yes.
a personality study
Yes.
we use a lot at Daystar. And he said, I thought this was fascinating. I was 32 when I went to the seminar.
Okay.
And he said, how old are you?
I'm 33.
Okay. He said, you become your real self right around the age of 32
Mm.
because you realize two things primarily. One, life doesn't work the way you thought it would,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't work the way you thought you would.
Mm.
And I love that I was right that age when he said it. And I think we do. We hit an
Yeah.
age where we think, whatever, wherever we are in life, but wherever we are in life, whatever our life looks
Mm-hmm.
like, it's not, there's some things that are different than what we expected. And
Yes.
some of those are going to cause grief, and some of them are going to cause a lot of joy. And I had to have an early hysterectomy because of some health issues. And it was so important for me to grieve that
Yes. Absolutely.
and to know that there is always joy on the other side, that that's
Mm-hmm.
who God is, that's how he loves us, and that what I have learned through all that is that the desires of my heart were so much deeper and more beautiful than I could have ever imagined.
Right.
And whatever it looks like, the little and the big desires will all be fulfilled
Right.
in heaven.
They are.
Yes.
They will.
Yeah.
Well, I applaud you for bringing that to the table, because I know that there are many women out there who are sitting in this or struggling with this. But I think about Paul even in the Bible, and he talks
Yes.
about it, and he actually talks about how it's better not to be married. And then you think about his accomplishments and the change to the whole world, writing 2/3 of the of the New Testament, all of these things, and beautiful things that come out of that sacrifice, because that's what it is.
Yes.
It's a sacrifice to your own dreams.
Mm.
And I imagine there's so much grieving that has to be done, especially as one who helps other people walk through grief and healing, that is so important, that you have had to walk through and address with yourself. And you have to have a really healthy sense of self-awareness, I'm sure, not to escape that in some form.
Oh,
And so I'm so thankful that you're vulnerable enough to share that. And I know that touches many, many women's hearts, because I know women that's the desire of their heart.
yes.
But that hasn't been what has happened for their life yet. And like you said, we never know where God is going to call us to next, or what he's going to place in our lives.
Yes.
But I think the most stunning part of your story is that you have been obedient over and over to step into these hard places, and for you to be able to recognize that if your season had looked differently, if it had looked like what you would have chosen for yourself, that you wouldn't have been able to, in whatever capacity, step in or say yes in those places. So I love your perspective on that. I think it's raw and beautiful, and it's something that a lot of women need to hear. And I'm just so grateful.
Well, I am in such a sweet season of it now that does feel so redemptive. I can't remember if I've told you this about myself, but I was an only child till I was 16.
I didn't know this.
Yes, when my parents told me they were pregnant, evidently the first thing I said to my mom was, I didn't know y'all still did that. And so I have this precious little sister who
Yes.
is just a little bit older than you. She owns a clothing store in Nashville called
Okay.
Katie McCarthy. And our mom, we lost our mom 5 years ago this fall.
Oh, I'm so
and
sorry.
Thank you, me too. It's awful. It's so hard. Is your mom
She's
around?
here.
Good.
She's here.
It's really hard to lose your mom. I'm sure your dad too. But she has a 5 and 2-year-old little boy. And so I have this amazing gift now of getting to be, they call me Diddy. So I get to be their aunt. I think mom kind of commissioned me to be grandmother too. And so if I'm in town, they spend a night a week with me if I can make it work. And we just have the best time. During the pandemic, they live 4 blocks from me. And so I bought a golf cart so I
No
could
way.
go back and forth and pick them up for bunking parties. Do you call them bunking parties?
Well,
from
we
Arkansas?
actually just built a bunk room, so
That's so fun.
yes.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it feels like we just never know where he's going to surprise
That's
us
right.
with good.
And I think of people too, like Lisa Harper,
Yes.
and people
Oh,
that are
yes.
just so motivational and encouraging, and their life doesn't look, it doesn't look.
It's out of the box.
It's out of the
that you were
box.
talking about.
There's no box. God doesn't want you to feel like that there's a box that you have to fit into, because I like to think that God broke the mold with everyone, and I actually tell the boys a lot that we're all like snowflakes, and none of us are made the same. Even if they're twins and they look the same, we are just so beautifully and uniquely, fearfully and wonderfully made
Yes.
from the Lord. And so I think that God would be sad to think about all these people that have tried to live within a box. And I even think about older generations, my parents' generation even, and it's the work 9 to 5, and there was a system in place.
Yes.
And probably for my generation, the millennial generation, I feel like we probably the first not the first, but the first that have been less afraid to step outside of the expectation or the norm of
So true.
society and be like, we want to work from home. We want flexibility. We want to be home with our kids. We want to, pursue the thing that we love to do and be able to provide for our family by doing it and find a way to do that. I love that we live in this age where we can, although it, on the flip side, also there are all the things that come along with the technology that enables that.
Yes.
So there are going to be two sides of the coin with everything you look at. But I do love to tell people that there is no box for you. God didn't make you to fit in. He actually calls us to be set apart.
Yes.
So speaking to that is just something that I enjoy doing, and I enjoy encouraging, especially women who are feeling like there's nothing for them, that nothing sounds like the thing that they want to do. Sometimes I like to say, think of all the things that you love and then like mash them up together and
Yes.
think of, I don't know, think of an Etsy shop that you could
Yes.
make from
There's
whatever
so
that
many
passion
options now.
is.
Yes.
It's crazy.
It is.
But it is something. I'm 33 and I would totally agree with him that at some point, probably in your 30s, all of a sudden you know what's important. Your priorities are pretty set. You care way less about the world and people's opinion. And I think it's just beautiful to step into that place of confidence and security, of worrying less about the outside and worrying more about what God has put in you and the family around you and the people that are in your life versus all the noise out there. Because in your 20s, I feel like you're just trying to figure it out
Yes.
and sift through it all. And then your 30s, you're like, wait, just a minute. You figure out what's important. You figure out life is short. You've lived enough life to experience grief or trauma, or there's a depth of life that you reach, I think, in your 30s.
I think that's very true. And I would say every decade has been better for me.
I love to hear that. I love to hear that. But this is my meandering thought here. Shay and I were just discussing what a joy it is to be able to dream. And we dream together now, and that's like a new milestone in our marriage. But just in general, I grew up in rural America, in Arkansas, and I've discovered since then, probably in my 30s, what a luxury it is to dream.
Yes.
People don't dream because they can't afford it. And by that I mean it feels too much like a luxury to think about something that you would like to do versus the thing that you need to do just for practicality's sake.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes complete sense.
And so that is something that Shay and I have, we talk a lot about when we go home, and anything that we could do for our communities to encourage dreaming. Because I especially think in small towns or, in rural America, or even an older generation, that's not something that you had the luxury of doing.
Yes.
Was dreaming.
Yes.
And I'm sure maybe in a way it felt like dreaming to you to not take over your family business and to do something that you actually enjoyed. When I went to college, I didn't declare my first trimester. I'm in pregnancy land. I didn't declare my first year through because I just wanted to see what was out there, but I knew that I was artistic. I actually wanted to go into photography or the arts.
Did you really?
And I did declare that my second year, and then I was like, this isn't practical. That bubbled back up in me, and I was like, I need to do something that's practical, and I switched to speech path.
Wow. And then didn't love it.
And I knew I would love helping children, and I knew I would help. I knew that I would enjoy that aspect of it, but it wasn't the first thing, that my heart really enjoyed doing, which is writing and painting and photography and, anything creative. But it's funny because that wasn't practical. And I got scared and I was like, I don't need to do that. I can't be an artist
Yes.
and make a living.
That bunny.
And here we are. And I'm married to an artist. So
That's true.
two artists just living together.
That's so funny. I love it.
So you just never know.
You never
You
know.
just never know where the Lord's going to take you. And you just have to be courageous enough to say yes.
Yes, and trust His goodness.
Trust His
that
goodness.
It's going to be with you every step of the way.
That's right. And I also love that you have the gift of looking back and reflecting on your life and going, look at all these things and places. Look at all these people. And if it were up to me, it wouldn't have looked like this. And that is His goodness.
It is.
And I think probably a huge struggle that you probably deal with in your office and in life, all of us do, is why things happen the way they do, understanding things.
Yes.
And we may never until we get to the other side.
Right.
And I find that there's comfort in that too.
Yes.
Because it's a bigger picture than just us. Sometimes when I fly on an airplane, I'll look out and I'm like, wow, look at all these people and houses and cities. And I'm like, we are just a speck. And I see it like a tapestry. And maybe it's just the artist in me.
I was about to say, there's that artist.
But I see it like a tapestry, and each of us are just one tiny thread in this huge tapestry. You've seen the tapestries that are like along a wall that are hung up.
Yes.
And each of us are like one little thread in the storyline. And I also like to think that when we find Christ, it's like our little thread turns gold. And then the gold, as it weaves in, can touch other threads and they all start turning gold. That's just the artist mind in me.
That is beautiful.
But I like to think that even if we don't see the impact of our little thread or our little light that we're shining, when you step back and you see the bigger picture, you're like, wow, it's so beautiful. And God had a plan for it overall.
Yes.
And I'm a part of it.
Yes.
I love that.
Me too. That's going to stay with me, the tapestry of gold.
Thank you. I know I need to paint it one day, but I don't have a lot of free time.
No, well, it might not be the season for that.
It's not the season.
Yes.
Well, Sissy, I so thank you for coming out here.
Thank you for having me. It's been delightful to sit down with you.
Well, I have loved it. I have looked forward to this for some time. Did you go on vacation last week?
I did.
To the beach with your sister?
Yes.
I saw that. It
And
looked
the boys.
so amazing.
It was so fun.
Oh, gosh. I hope y'all do that every year. Is that an annual thing?
Yes, we try to.
Amazing.
Yes, you're so kind.
Let this be your encouragement to have a yearly, bi-yearly, annual something just for yourself. That's so important.
Amen.
We could touch on that too. You help a lot of people. You should take time. And
Thank
I
you.
love that.
Thank you.
And I love getting to see you. And I love the wisdom and the grace that you have shared with us today and the vulnerability. Tell everyone where they can find you.
RaisingBoysandGirls.com is our website, and it has links to all the books, to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast, which we're on the same network, which is really fun. And I try to be really active on Instagram. I just don't believe it's ever been harder to be a parent. And so I am at Sissy Goff, and then David Thomas and I together do Raising Boys and Girls, and we're just trying to help as much as we possibly can in all the spaces.
I love it. And these are free resources. I mean, I actually went through yesterday and sat down and looked through all of your highlights, and I was like, I don't think I can do anything else the rest of the day because I'm just taking it all in. And it's all so applicable. But these are resources available to any and every parent. And Sissy, that's your gift. You're bringing that to the world, and you are not charging anything for it. And I just think that is a gift of technology today. And the fact that you are willing to spend your time to pour out to parents who are in the thick of it, and just need to hear from someone that there are tools and that it's going to be okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So I thank you so much for what you do. I thank you for being here today. And I just thank you for encouraging everyone that's heard this, because I know that there has been something in this for each and every one. When I do this podcast, I say, even if it's for one person, even if one heart or life is touched and changed, that's it. That's worth it to me. That's worth it to God. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been an honor, and I'm just grateful for you.
It's been fun. We'll have to do it again.
Yes.
All right, guys. I hope you have a good week. Bye. Thank
Thank you so much for listening today. If this episode has encouraged you, please feel free to share the show with your family and friends. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world today, and my hope is that this show is a candle in the dark.